This is Brent with Lykins Motorsports. Happy holidays to you guys, and I guess this is the New Year weekend coming up, so Happy New Year to everybody. This is a video that I've been wanting to make for quite a while. These are the tunnel port heads for our 397 cubic inch dyno mule. And these things have fought me tooth, hair, and eyeball for the past months. Just to get you back up to speed, we got these in, did all of our normal stuff to them, bronze valve guides. They've got some 5/16 stem SI stainless valves, 2 1/4 and 1 750. Pretty typical stuff for these tunnel port heads. Did the valve job and got them ready to port and shipped them out to Joe Crane, who did an excellent job on these. I think these, I'll have to take a look at the numbers again, but I think these are sitting there around 380 CFM. So they're gonna make some horsepower. But he noticed that this exhaust valve seat had spun, and I'm so happy that he found it, because that's obviously something that needs to be taken care of. I think the reason it spun was because this chamber had been welded, and I think it distorted this enough that it made the hole out around. I'm just kind of speculating at this point. But what happened was, where these two seats meet, it was obvious that this seat had spun because the marks didn't line up. So we went to, got them ported and got them back in the shop, and we went to take a look at it and change seats, and we could just drive the seat out just with a punch and a hammer very easily. All of these exhaust valves have had seats installed. I would imagine that somebody put hardened seats in there just because they thought they need to, which is kind of a wives' tale. But the bore was not, it was out around by quite a bit. And it already, the seats that come for replacement for this size are 1875 OD. And then it steps up to a 1938 OD. So we got a variety of seats in. The 1875, the new seat, just fell in the bore. So that's a very sickening feeling when that happens, because you are looking at, if you're having to cut the bore for the seat much larger than what's already there, you take a chance of hitting water, especially in these tunnel port heads. They're just funky, okay? There's a lot of things that you can't do to them like you can a regular medium riser or low riser head. So 1875 seat fell in. So I looked around and called a company out in Las Vegas who deals in custom valve seats. And let me grab one right here. So we ordered a custom valve seat. This is a 1900 diameter. But once we started cutting the bore for the valve seat, it just wouldn't. We got to the point where we were not having much press fit anymore, and the bore was out of round. You can see we used some Dicam marking compound, and everything was round except for like 15 or 20 degrees in this area, and then the cutter just wasn't making contact there. So, you know, it's one of those gambles that you make. And I made the executive decision to, after digging around in the water ports and everything, I made the executive decision to just go ahead and cut it for a 1938 seat. and we didn't have any issues, no distortions, no cracks when we drove the seat in, and that's where we are. So you know, the alternative was to scrap the head, so we're not going to scrap the head. There's nothing else wrong with this head, and we'll just see how it does. So I am in the process of cleaning everything, getting everything ready for assembly. I've been waiting to put these heads together for months. It's just, you know, things go on the back burner because of customer builds, and then we're waiting on custom parts to come in. We're waiting on machinists to be able to work on stuff. So I ran to my machinist shop yesterday, and we spent 5 hours working on this head and trying to get it all laid out. In the process, I had these inserts put in for our rocker arm studs to give us a little bit more bite. Initially, I had planned on a big healthy solid roller, so I was wanting a capability for some pretty good spring loads. I then changed to that billet core solid flat tappet to go with our flat plane crank, so the spring loads went down. But in the process of working on the heads yesterday, we found out that some idiot, who shall remain nameless, whose initials are Brent Lykins, put the wrong inserts in, and instead of a 3/8 insert, put a 5/16. So we spent a good hour and a half yesterday removing those inserts and drilling and tapping for larger inserts. So it was a fun day. Then tapped our feed hole for restrictor, and I've got it all blocked off because we'll be oiling through the push rods on this motor. So this little engine will have a story to tell when it's finished. So yeah, here's all of our valves. Again, SI stainless, with a radius groove, beadlock groove on the stem. These are 5/16. These are very light valves, which is what we need. Then we're going to have some comp cams spring locators. We're going to be using some Manley titanium retainers. Valve springs are these PSI brand springs. PSI is a very, very high quality valve spring. These are probably at the top of the food chain when it comes to valve springs. PAC, PSI, Manley Next Tech, all good valve springs. So it's just whatever that you can find for your particular combination, depending on which brand you go with. These are cup springs, and back in the cup days when they ran solid rollers, the spring loads were pretty light, which is kind of what we need for our billet solid flat tappet cam. So these are going to install at, I think, around 200, 225 seat and around 500 open. These are very small outside diameter springs. When I don't use a conical or beehive, I choose to use a very small diameter dual spring. These are 1/460 outside diameter, and that lets us use these smaller titanium retainers. For valve locks, we're going with Manley. These are titanium valve locks for 5/16 stem, 10-degree retainers. We got 10-degree retainers. Then we're going to use these Viton valve seals. So let's get started. We're going to start measuring install heights. I did this, seems like ages ago, but I'm going to go back through it, double check all my work, and make sure that nothing has changed. And we'll start putting these puppies together. So you'll notice that as I just went over the parts, we're mixing and matching brands, which is fine, but you just need to make sure that everything matches as far as dimensions go. You can't use any 10-degree, dual spring retainer. You can't use any locator. Everything has to fit snugly. So when all this fits together, you want a nice snug fit. That retainer, you don't want it to be sloppy. The point of a valve spring retainer and a locator is to keep everything moving or not moving. You want it to be as stationary as you can. So these literally locate the spring, and you want a good tight fit. Sometimes you'll get a retainer that's a little snug. That's perfectly fine. You just don't want it sloppy, and a little bit of an interference fit is okay as well. And here's the top end of our head. I've got everything flipped over now. Beautiful C7 OE cast numbers. Factory repair. It appears sometimes I get old parts in here, blocks and such, and you see a little brazing. It could be that somebody fixed this, but more often than not, I get a lot of stuff in here where I think that the factory had done it before machining. But bronze valve guides for our 5/16 valves. Restrictor. When you check these for restrictors, this hole just happened to be 1/4 inch. So these heads vary from head to head, from different casting to different casting. For instance, a Cobra Jet head, a tunnel port head, or a low riser head, or whatever. This hole will vary. So this one happened to be 1/4 inch, so it accepted a 5/16 coarse tap, and I just used a set screw, and that's pretty standard fare. If I wanted to oil through the heads, and I would drill something like a 70 thousandths hole in that set screw. So notice this big hole here. This is for cylinder head drains. This is why we got our head drains plugged. If you remember, this is the engine that's going to have the enclosed cam tunnel. Going to have quite a bit of oil filling up in the valley. Don't want to add to it. So we're going to be draining the cylinder heads straight to the oil pan, and I have my C8AX oil pan coming back from pan shop right now, and they installed some. Well, I'll just wait and have another video on that. I think it should be back here Tuesday. This particular shop does a whole lot of nice work for me, and they modified my factory deep sump pan to have some gates and some trap doors inside, and also some fittings and for our drain lines. So, and there's actually some science in engine building and where to put those fittings in the oil pan. So everything has been thought through as carefully as I can. But I'm gonna get my spring mic, and we're gonna start mapping out our install heights. Some preliminary measurements were at around 1/9/15 on this valve, and this one's a little bit taller, but we can shim up to get the install heights the same. This is our titanium retainer and our titanium locks. So at 1/900, I'm at 230 pounds seat, and that our camshaft is a 406 lobe lift. So if I multiply that by 176, I get 715 lift at the valve, and lash spec is 20 thousandths. So we've got about 695 thousandths theoretical lift at the valve. Things change, deflection and that sort of thing. But I've already put one of the springs in the tester and checked coil bind. We're going to be at about 70 thousandths coil bind clearance, which is right in the money. And I'm going to go through and I've already marked this spring. It was a random spring that I picked to check out, but this is where it binds up. I'm gonna go through, check all the spring loads and all the coil bind measurements to make sure that we'll be safe. You don't want to get any closer than 50 or 60 thousandths normally. And we'll check all these springs out. Once that happens, we'll go through and map all of our install heights, and then we know what we need to shim to put all the springs at the same loads. All of our springs have been checked, and you get what you pay for when it comes to valve springs. I ran through all 16, and I don't think that the install height, the seat load varied by more than 1 or 2 pounds. So just excellent quality parts. I've got all of our install heights dialed in as closely as I can to 1/900, and I'm going to back the valves out and get our valve seals on. These are Manley Viton valve seals. They have a metal body, so they don't deform when you push them on, and they give you a good seal against the valve stem. Once that happens, then I can check my retainer to valve seal clearance. Obviously, we need more than about 700 thousandths there. I think we're going to be in good shape. And then we can get to assembling the springs and retainers onto the valves. And before you get carried away putting all your valve seals on, it's always good to stop right here and check your retainer to seal clearance. I have 900 thousandths. So plenty of clearance and a little data for later on if I want to change cams or you know, another build with these exact same parts. So all the valve seals are going to go on. We're going to load our valves in, and then we'll start putting springs on. All right, so we're going to go through and load our valve springs on. These are, as I mentioned, titanium retainers and titanium locks, and titanium locks to gall. So I'm going to coat each pair with some assembly lube so that they don't have any opportunity to do that. A lot of noise. All that assembly lube makes my fingers slick. Another thing that is a little bit different is that if you lose a lock, you can't grab a magnet and pick it up. You get into the habit of wanting to do that because you're used to working with steel locks. And that's one assembled, ready to roll. I'm not going to bore you with the rest of the 7, so I'm going to get those knocked out. And here's an assembled head. Now, if you have a good eye, you'll notice that the tip of the exhaust valves is lower than the tip of the intake valves, and that's you know, if we could easily change that, then we would do that. But based off of the fact that we don't want to be, well, a lot of that is because, you know, the seats are maybe sunk just a little bit over time. I don't want to be putting all new seats in these heads. You just run the risk of cracking, you run the risk of hitting water. And if I don't have to, then I'm not going to. And over 60 years with, you know, valve jobs and that sort of thing, this kind of thing happens. So what I'll do is just run an 80 thousandths thick lash cap on the exhaust, and that will put our basically the tip height where the rocker arm interfaces with the valve at the same height. If this were a easily replaceable cylinder head, then I would probably try to do some things differently. But it is what it is, and we're gonna roll with it. And here we are, install heights all checked for this, the other head. And it's very important that you double check everything. Don't assume both cylinder heads will be the same. This head took different shims than the other head, so I'm, just start from scratch, make everything, check everything, then make it what you want it to be. So I'll also check our retainer to seal clearance and all that stuff. Getting ready to knock the valves back out, put the valve seals on. We're done. 2 assembled tunnel port heads for our 397 dyno mule. This will be one engine that, well, 2 things. It's going to be different and rare, extremely rare, and different than anything else that has been ran to my knowledge. And it's going to probably scare me to death when I go to a dyno. I get nervous anyway, and this one will probably have me clenched up pretty tight. But the heads are done, and the weather is decent here today, so I'll probably get a coat of paint on them, and I'll probably stick them on the block under the bag so they'll be safe and sound until we get more parts. Still waiting on a crankshaft, still waiting on pistons. Bullet says that my cam should be here any day, so we're just waiting on parts. Alright guys, thank you for watching this one, and hope you're having a good holiday season with your family. If you haven't yet, hit that subscribe button, and hit that like button too. Y'all have a good weekend. So, after the hit the subscribe button and all that stuff, I thought I'd go ahead and lay some paint on. So, here's what they look like painted, with our drains in. Paint needs to set just a little bit longer, and then I think I'll stick them on the block and bag them up so everything is safe and sound. All right, I'm going for good now. And I had to add one more video segment. And I'll probably add one more too, because I'm getting ready to slap the intake manifold on just to see what it looks like. All right, stay tuned. And here's what we're looking at. This intake looks painted, but it's actually been vapor blasted by Bobby Crumpley down in Texas. So that's a natural aluminum finish. It looks great. It looks great up against these cylinder heads. All right, I'm gonna sign off for good. Catch y'all later.